In the early years of the Beatles, John Lennon and Paul McCartney formed a prolific songwriting partnership, frequently crafting their hits at Paul's family home on Forthlin Road in Allerton, or at John's Aunt Mimi's house on Menlove Avenue. As time went on and the band's musical style evolved, their creative process began to shift. By the late 1960s, the duo often worked separately, only coming together later to refine or finalize their songs. Despite these changes in collaboration, all songs written during their time with the Beatles continued to be credited jointly as Lennon-McCartney. There were occasions when collaboration didn't occur at all, which Lennon later admitted had upset him, particularly when McCartney worked independently. A prominent example was the 1968 song "Why Don't We Do It in the Road" from the White Album. The sessions for that album were known for being turbulent, and during the recording of Back in the USSR, tensions rose to the point that Ringo Starr temporarily left the band. McCartney reportedly came up with the idea for "Why Don't We Do It in the Road" while the band was in Rishikesh, India. He had seen two monkeys mating in the street and was struck by the simplicity of the act, which inspired the theme of the song. During a lull in the White Album sessions, Paul teamed up with Ringo to bring the track to life. Since John and George Harrison were engaged with other songs at the time, Paul and Ringo decided to move forward without them. In his memoir, The Lyrics, McCartney recalled how the song came about. He explained that one night while working in Studio 2 at Abbey Road, essentially the Beatles' home base, he had grown tired of waiting around after everyone else had left. The studio was nearly empty, except for a security officer and someone at the door, so he quietly slipped into Studio 3 with Ringo to record a rough, spontaneous track that revolved around a single repetitive phrase or mantra. This impromptu session occurred on October 9th, 1968. The next day, the pair returned to enhance the recording with additional vocals and drum elements, while John and George continued working on Glass Onion. Years later, Lennon looked back on the track with a sense of bitterness. During a 1980 interview with Playboy, he noted that McCartney had effectively created the entire song on his own, playing the instruments, singing, and recording in a separate studio. Lennon said this was indicative of how distant the band had become at the time. He admitted that while he enjoyed the track, he had felt hurt whenever Paul completed songs without including him. He couldn't speak for George, but for himself, the lack of involvement stung, though in hindsight, he acknowledged it as part of how things were by then. McCartney, for his part, later responded to criticism about his relationship with Lennon, particularly after Yoko Ono claimed in an interview that Paul had hurt John more than anyone else. Paul defended himself, stating that people often ignored the ways in which John had hurt him as well. He pointed to the "Why Don't We Do It in the Road" situation as one of the only publicly discussed instances. McCartney emphasized that the decision to record it without John wasn't deliberate or malicious. At the time, John and George were preoccupied, and he and Ringo happened to be free, so they decided to make use of the time and get something done.